Hello and welcome to The Voice of Iron, and on this session we'll be reading Dreams of Rain, Tape 4. The Undercity was crowded, as usual, with large, unending groups of people shuffling along the tightly packed streets and alleyways provided. I traveled with my hands in my pockets, keeping a fairly low profile, mixing in with the crowds as I glanced up and around my environment. The Undercity was the darkest part of the colony, usually, the only light coming from the flickering neon signs and lights of the shops and shady businesses down here. I had to watch my footing to avoid tripping on discarded cans and bottles, the litter of thousands strewn across the dull street plates. Looking up, the air wasn't much better, as clouds of smoke from food carts and smokers alike rose hundreds of feet in the air, easily obscuring the top of the oxygen domes, keeping us all breathing. It's an eerie sort of place. Never truly quiet, but rarely excessively loud. You'd always hear a mix of various conversations, dialects from all over the galaxy, and quite a few from right here. You always pass the occasional beggar asking for a handout or two, some just sitting huddled together near each other. The purple glow of an Astris advertisement cast across a shivering old man was, unfortunately, a common sight down here. Truth be told, most people in the Undercity who weren't begging weren't far from poverty themselves. Only difference between those who live on the streets and those who live in the apartment towers would be a steady flow of cash from an Astris job. I squinted my eyes at the signs, trying not to get lost. Graffiti across the street signs was ever-changing, so I relied most commonly on the establishments to guide me. Quaid's Bar, Deckard's Noodles, Jensen's Cybernetics Repair. Familiar names lit up on the metal building walls en route to my destination. There it is, I said to myself quietly, stepping inside of a gated door under a blinking, reddish-yellow sign that simply read, Real to Real. "Hey, Jago," I started, walking past racks of cassettes near the entrance, looking about to see the usual tape shelves organized and cleaned well enough. "Hold on a minute, be right there," a faintly accented voice called from the back. I strolled in and browsed through the music section while I waited, looking to see if he'd stocked anything new in the dim fluorescent light. "Aye, aye, if it ain't Kitt," the voice said, as I turned to see the familiar, darkened face of Jago walk out from the back. A bright smile, broken up by a few chrome teeth, adorned his otherwise clear face as he approached. I braced myself as he walked closer and felt the typical bear hug greeting, the edge of his braided goatee tickling the back of my neck. I returned the gesture as best I could before he backed up to speak. "Well now, what are you looking for today? More synthwave music? Or maybe a good VRH film to pass the time?" he asked, in his all-too-familiar accent, brushing aside a few dreadlocks from his face. "Actually, I came to inquire about some of your specialty tapes," I said quietly, eyeing the back room. Hearing this, he lowered his voice and kept an eye on the entrance. I see. Already gone to the best nav tapes in the business, but if you're looking for some special maneuvers, I've got a buddy in the security forces," he began, adjusting his pale tank top as he started walking back from the counter. No nav tapes today, Jago. I actually need, a bridge." He stopped and pursed his lips, freezing mid-movement as he was reaching under the counter where he hid the nav tapes. "Hold the phone. You want a bridge? I said a bridge drive coordinate tape." "That's right. I'd prefer a bridge to the nearby GU system. It's only 3 light years from here, right?" I reiterated, nodding to confirm his inquiry. "Unless you don't have one." Jago chuckled lightly, shaking his head. "Now, Kitt, you know I got everything in the way of tapes. But what do you need with a bridge? You go out and buy yourself an old cargo ship or something?" I don't think you'd believe me even if I told you," I said simply, which led to a shrug in response. "Aye, your life. Anyway, I got what you need. 1 bridge to GU for Class 6 and above drives. It's pricey though," he warned, producing an unmarked box from deep beneath the counter. I flipped it open subtly, seeing beneath the cardboard and padding a pristine-looking black bridge tape before closing it again. "Don't worry, I can pay it," I reassured him, closing the box once more. "All right, good. That'll be $2.50. No credit, you know the drill. Should I hold on to it for you, or?" he began, only to stop as I tossed the amount onto the table. His face turned to worry as he counted out the bills. "Carrying that kind of cash down here only leads to trouble, Kitt. You better be careful on your way out. I don't want any of the gangers to hit my most loyal customer," he warned, stashing the money in his register quickly as I held the box firmly under my arm. Don't worry, Jago. I'll be okay. This isn't my first trip to the Undercity, you know, I reassured him with a thin smile. He seemed to have been put at ease by that response, before nodding and resecuring his hidden desk compartments as I walked back out onto the streets. I strolled slowly, keeping my head down and attempting to hide the tape inside of my coat, keeping my arm close by. I kept up a steady pace, making good time back towards the secure garage where I had parked. Just a little closer. Closer.
Oi, you there.
A deep, gravelly voice shouted. I kept walking, hoping it was for someone else.
You there, in the coat.
I walked faster, trying to mix into what sparse crowd there was in this part of the street. I soon felt a hard hit in my abdomen, a metallic sound ringing as I reeled back in pain and looked up at my attackers. There were 3 of them, taller than average, very well built, and riddled with cybernetics. The one who punched me seemed skinny and sported a very illegal-looking mechanical arm, which he was pulling back to adjust his sleeveless shirt.
Sorry, must have misfired, see?
He said with a toothy grin plastered across his pale face. The one in the back walked with a clank, likely modded legs, and probably had built-in jacks based on his imposing height. The one in the front looked to be the leader, a large, muscular individual, bare-chested, with a visor implant replacing his eyes. All 3 of them sported the distinct red mohawks atop their otherwise clean-shaven heads, marking them as members of the downtown dozers. "I've got nothing for you," I said, backing up, regaining my stance as I looked them over.
Hear that, boys? He ain't got nothing for us,
the big one said, leading all 3 to chuckle.
You sure, boss? Maybe my ear's glitching, but I could have sworn he said he had a donation for us,
the tall one in the back said, tapping the metal dome replacing his ear.
A donation, you say? Well, how kind of you,
the big one said, grabbing my shirt collar and lifting me off the ground.
Pity that some people refuse to give to the needy these days, isn't it?
He questioned, slowly, his visor flashing red. Before I could respond, a loud voice shouted from behind us. "There a problem over here, boys?" They all looked towards the voice, and, turning as best I could, I saw a thinner man silhouetted by the light behind him. As he came closer, a few details became clearer, such as the blue uniform, the Astra security badge, and the metallic gleam off of a much cleaner-looking robotic arm. And right by that arm, a blaster in its holster.
Oh, evening, officer. We was just talking to our friend here, see?
The boss said, putting me down slowly and very roughly ruffling my hair. I'm sure. Say, how about you boys run along before I decide to check your permits for those upgrades you've got there? The officer stated flatly, gesturing towards the visor and the arms on the punks.
Oh, of course. We were just leaving, right, boys? He exclaimed, turning and circling with his finger as they walked off into the alley.
Thanks, officer, I managed, letting out a sigh of relief before looking in his direction. Just a couple of cyberpunks. But don't thank me yet. You're not off the hook yourself, he said, his face still backlit by the light of his patrol bike, the only visible detail being his short, clean-cut brown hair. I stayed silent, my relief halting for a moment, before he stepped a bit closer. That's right, you're in trouble. For not letting me know you were coming down. As the light around his bike died down, my face of concern turned to a smile as I saw the familiar face of a friend. Mark, I greeted happily. Sorry for not telling. It's a long story, I started, before he held up his real hand. You can fill me in and make it up to me at the same time. Hop on the bike. The hibachi place by my patrol office is open. Taking that in stride, I hopped onto the back of his bike and held the tape in my coat firmly as the hoverjets came online, and we sped off, flying over the crowds. That concludes today's reading, and thank you for listening to my voice.